Camera 1, camera 2, and that's camera 3 for you. Hey, what's up, guys? Discover Cardano. I'm James Gutierrez, for those of you who don't know me. I'm here with John Valdez, of course. Thank you so much. I'm new to the scene. I'm new. I don't want to say I'm super new, but
You're a liar.
yeah, I'm super new. No, but I mean, I'm learning. I'm learning quick. You know, as you can see, I'm branded to the gills, but I have committed fully. But I want to know more. And I think there's a lot of people that want to know more as well. And, you know, for you, this is going to be a basic one, but if you could tell me in one sentence, what is Cardano and what makes it different from just another crypto or just another blockchain?
Wow, one sentence.
Yeah, try to sum that up.
If I were to put it into a sentence, Cardano is a proof of stake global system for financial and intercommerce. Yes.
Okay. No, I mean, so that comes up a lot. People say proof of stake. You know, what does Cardano's version actually do for a user?
Well, to get a little bit more generalized, I think, what's really important when it comes to new users and blockchains, I think the first thing is, where are they coming from, right? A lot of people will say things like, what can Cardano do for me? For the most part, I would say majority it's likely coming from like a trading point of view, right? How can Cardano make me money? But I think that's inherently a flawed way to think about things, right?
Okay.
Every blockchain in itself is essentially a foundation for you to build things like dApps or smart contracts or maybe a new financial end, right? And in order to build a house, you need to have that same foundations, right?
Of course.
So Cardano is a foundation that you can build, beautiful apps on that are composable. You could do things like use governance. You can use a very great consensus mechanism. You can also have proof of stake built in. There's native assets, right? Yeah, I definitely say to fully answer your question, I would say first we need to find out what that user is, right? And maybe you can go a little bit further or pinpoint someone you want to focus on.
Okay. I guess for me, one of the reasons I came in, I wanted to get some money. I think you nailed it. That's the first reason. I've been exposed to it a little bit more. I understand there's much more to it than just, how can I flip a quick buck? But I guess, I think that's where most people jump in. That's the starting point. So what would be your, hello world starter if you wanted to, let's say, buy some ADA, get something started, store it, figure it out. If you wanted to dip your toes in the water, so to speak.
So like we're talking about purchasing ADA. First and foremost, you have to have a goal in mind, right? Are you purchasing this ADA to hold? Are you purchasing this ADA to trade? Are you using it in a DEX, a contract, right? But first they have to have the ends to a means, right? So to the person coming into the industry, a lot of times they'll see things reach all-time highs. Like, wow, maybe I should be into this, right?
Yeah.
But inherently you have to ask yourself, why do they reach this point? And what is your goal in order to involve yourself in an ecosystem? If it is just monetary gain, right? It's not something I could say or, suggest to someone that says, you should buy ADA because XYZ, right? I don't think that is a necessarily best way to look at it, but maybe I could say you should use ADA, right? I think anyone can get behind things like use of ADA, right? Why would you want to use ADA? And inherently, you have to look at what blockchains provide, right? And first and foremost, they have a decentralized layer where you can interchange things like value, right?
Okay.
So you have to have the need to exchange value in the first place. So if someone is looking at Cardano or any blockchain and say, well, why would I use this is maybe a better question, right?
Okay.
And why would someone use Cardano for, let's say, creating a token, right? Well, when you look at your options, things like Ethereum, you'll likely have to create an ERC20 token, and those are also inherently smart contracts. One of the benefits of Cardano is them being native, and a lot of people don't understand what that actually provides. But if you look at things like Babel fees, for example, which is available on Cardano, being that it's a native asset, as long as there's a party that is willing to exchange value in return for your additional token, maybe it's like Hosky or something, right? They're like, hey, I'll take the hit, I'll take the Hosky, you get the transaction through. And the reason they can do that is because of some of the native asset components, right? And you can actually create systems to use those tokens as the exchange. Utilizing smart contracts starts to become a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
And, there's also things to consider about, like, which may change now with the Clarity Act, things like the Howey test in the past. One of the questions was, does it have any purpose outside of speculation, right? Things like utility. And that was actually the reason why Bitcoin and Ethereum a while back was deemed not a security. It was because of that utility aspect. So the ability to create a token on the network, though, that hasn't been passed by the Howey test for like Ethereum, right? Is this token on Ethereum have any utility to pay for things? No, right? So before you launch a token, you would have to have the app, and that token would have to be needed to be used in the app for it to operate.
Got it.
Right, and so that is a very hard thing to do, and on Cardano you wouldn't have to do such a thing as long as the purpose was for transactions or utilizing for Babel fees, etc.
Okay. So I mean, if I was going to summarize, it just makes things a lot easier, a lot smoother, but obviously there's still going to be some clunky elements to it as we move forward. In your opinion, this is, I'm trying to pick your brain a little bit here. What are some of the clunky things that are happening on the network now, and what's being done to smooth that out?
Well, I think everything's clunky if you really look at it, man. And that's not just Cardano. I mean, if you really get into the weeds of things, like Solidity is redundant, right? And what that means is there's like 256-bit integers, right? And like if you really want to get into like the weeds and things, there's so many clunky things, right? But for the most part, I would say getting something to be fully decentralized as a full DApp on a network like Cardano and any other network, right? There's going to be sacrifices you have to make, and those sacrifices usually create a lower quality application or user experience. So I think that's one of the things we can improve, where it's like fixing the user experience without losing some of the same values we already have. I think that's the biggest, kind of speed bump, if you will.
Fair enough. One of the big things that, especially from us newcomers like myself, we keep hearing stablecoin, right? Stablecoin this, stablecoin that. I've been hearing about, USDA on Cardano, for example. But, in plain English, for the layman like myself, what does USD stablecoin solve for normal people?
Stablecoins it's not necessarily it solves the problem for normal people. It definitely makes things a little bit easier to transact on DEXs. But
regarding those empty blocks, like where does even like things like that come up? Like if people are going to start talking shit like that, or if people are disparaging, or I guess discouraging people to come on to the Cardano, like where would that come from?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from the bear market, right? I think a lot of people think that we're out of the bear market. I think Cardano hasn't recovered, but majority of them haven't really evaluated the market correctly. I was speaking about this a couple of days ago, focusing on the Bitcoin valuations, right? And for these networks to recover and correct, they first need to confirm, right? And to do so, they need to actually come from overbought to oversold, right? And it takes a long time for that to do that. If you actually look through Cardano, the point where it's at its highest, you're probably going to see the largest amount of use, right? So you actually see the use of networks go down with the price. So I foresee that changing quite soon, and it's actually an indicator for bottoms for me, right? So if you can see the lowest amount of transactions on a chain, and it's on average the lowest, it's likely either it's going to recover or it's on its way to dwindling out, right? But we see Cardano as a top 10 token.
Yep.
We see one of the most active ecosystems in the world. And, being in it myself, I see developers developing every day. We have the Cardano Foundation that's not going anywhere. It's not going to go any for a very long time. Same thing with IOHK. They were just recently funded for Laos, et cetera. So those people aren't going away. The actual development of the blockchain is not going to stop. And with markets changing and demand goes up and down, we're going to see that happen on chain as well.
Gotcha. And I think that is a good segue into like what else I wanted to learn about this. I mean, we've met before. We've participated
Absolutely.
in some governance, I would say, to say the least. Community is a big part of Cardano, and that's kind of what has welcomed me in. I've been shunned, for lack of a better way to put it, when trying to attempt to join other places. But in line with that, you talked about developers. Who's deciding Cardano's upgrades, and how can a regular user like myself have a voice?
Yeah, I mean, anyone can put a proposal in for upgrades, right? It's just about the community wanting it, and if there's actual need. I think recently, like Pragma got funded for an alternative node, right? So in a situation, anyone can do that. I think everyone should do something very similar if they have a core piece of technology that they would want to improve Cardano. Don't complain about it. Do it. And there's every opportunity to do that. So I don't think there's anything holding people back. I always say that the loudest in the room is going to complain.
I like that.
And that's kind of what we see.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, one of the aspects that I've been learning quickly about is, builders on the network, and like, let's say there's some newbie builders, let's say a Web 2 dev who, wants to, start building, something on Cardano. How easy would it, or how difficult rather, would it be to ship, like, let's say a simple Cardano app, and where would they start?
I think it's super easy, but it depends on what your definition of simple is, right?
Fair.
Like, I love using the DocuSign example, right? Where it's, how would you blockify a DocuSign app, right? You don't throw every single, iota onto a blockchain. What you likely is most important to the end user is you having a high value signature, and then maybe like an ID, right? And so at that point, you'd only need to integrate some type of DID, which you have things all available. You have Viridian wallet from the Cardano Foundation. So you could literally just add a wallet to connect to it. That'll also serve as the timestamp signature.
Okay.
That use things like Kiri, and then you can add your ID to that, self-sovereign your information, and then now you have a better DocuSign, right? And those are literally just little tiny components. When you make let's say you confirm signature, instead of sending you just an email, maybe it makes a transaction as well. So as long as you can build a transaction and add a wallet connection, you can build a Cardano app.
Okay.
And you can do that very easily these days.
Okay. Definitely something I'm going to look into.
Yeah, it's one of the cool, like even like bridges, like as long as there's an open source bridge available, or like some type of like DEX available, really some of the hardest parts are just finding information out there, right? There's already back in the day, there was the open source NFT marketplace by Ales, right? So you could literally just rebrand it, and now you have a Spacebud NFT marketplace, right? Is that really difficult to do? No. The difficulty is when you get into novel things, and when you try to put everything on the blockchain, or like, maybe you're used to the design a completely different way, but now that we have, the need for a different flow, you might come into different roadblocks. But yeah, you can just use like things like Aiken, which you can use TypeScript to make smart contracts. So TypeScript, that's pretty easy. And then you have your front end, your back end, and in between there's the blockchain component, but it's probably about 10% of the app.
Okay. So I mean, obviously we're here in Dubai. We're here at GITEX 2025, Expand North Star. We have so many people who are asking a lot of questions. People who are in the know, people who are very new to the system and whatnot. But for our listeners here, in the Gulf and in Southeast Asia, what's one realistic way that Cardano could improve business payments, for example, in the next 12 months?
Yeah, well, I don't know about the next 12 months, but I've thought of this quite a bit, and I mentioned this in another podcast here, where it was the stablecoin topic, where I think a lot of things will end up going to platform-specific stablecoins, but very soon afterwards, I think they'll start to dwindle once people realize that different standards like ISO 2022, well, Cardano is, able to utilize that standard as well. So theoretically, you could send a fiat payment via Cardano as the payment rail to fiat payment. So I think you're all familiar with back in the day it was 3% credit card fee or 5%. Well, it wouldn't be a percentage. It would literally just be 0.17 ADA, right? So that's a pretty good deal, 3 to 5 minute settlement, not a bad. So at that point, the only way you can really improve that further is like them pushing it over to like Hydra, which I don't know if possible or not, but that would be, you open up a Hydra head, you make the payment's done, walk on your way, and feeless almost.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just one thing to wrap things up, just want to keep, I know you've been at this for a little bit already.
Oh, yeah, it's been a day.
It's been a long day. But if there's one myth about Cardano that you'd love to retire, what would it be?
Then we need liquidity. I think liquidity comes when people need to use an app. Like, for example, the platform-specific stablecoin, right? Let's say you're Goldman Sachs and you have GUSD. Well, for every dollar someone needs of it, one is created, and that is liquidity, right? And when someone sells it, that dollar goes out of liquidity, right? So liquidity is there. Liquidity is always there, right? It's just based on demand. And so when you think that if we add a magical number into Cardano, more people are going to use it, that's likely completely false, right? We can see things like Algorand adding USDC. If you do the numbers, actually the outflows was more than the inflows, right? So there is no proof that doing that to Cardano would add users or improve our reality, honestly.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. It was a pleasure
Absolutely.
getting to, and you're helping a newbie like me stay here, and again, a very welcoming community.
Oh, I got more for you to stay here, buddy.